everyone, my name is Paweł Kmiecik. I work as a senior software engineer in machine learning at deepsense.ai, and today I'm going to show you the topic of generative AI developer toolkit. So let's begin with the quick agenda. We'll start with the motivation. Why should we start being interested in this topic? Then we go to in-editor code generators. After that, we'll check the capabilities of ChatGPT. I'll also show you some other useful tools. We'll go then to summary, some recommendations, and we also say something about security considerations. So let's start. Honestly saying, privately, I ignored for the first time, I ignored the coding assistance tools. I checked one which worked not well, let's say. I won't say which one. It was before the GPT revolution, but we all, a few months ago, experienced this feeling probably that, oh my God, we probably will be replaced by AI. And then I started to think about some plan B. So what else can I do? And I always wanted to be a blacksmith or maybe a party DJ, or my, let's say, closest dream, being a goat breeder. But it was clear after some time that it won't happen very soon, because GPT is great, but it's not probable that it will replace us. But at the same time, people who can use AI efficiently might replace us. So that's why we should start experiencing with AI-based tools. And let's start with some prerequisites. So before getting into any AI generation helper tool, whatever, I highly recommend starting or getting to know what is prompt and how to build prompts efficiently, because all of the modern AI tools are using large language models, and especially GPT-like models, and all of them use this idea of prompts greatly. Here is the link which I recommend to starting with how to build efficient prompts. And so, as we know that this is the must-have skill, then we can go to next part, which is in-editor code generators. And as you probably guess, we'll start with GitHub Copilot. It was, I think, the first tool which greatly used large language models. First release of this tool was in October 2021. And what is important is to understand how this tool works underneath, just to not be surprised. So the tool is working as a plugin to most modern IDEs, Visual Studio Code, JetBrains IDEs. So the plugin itself queries completions for our code by building a prompt which consists of prefix and suffix part. More important is prefix part, so the things before the completion to be generated, because it includes some preceding code snippets as well as other context information. And this context which is sent is really interesting. Why? Because it includes, for example, other file snippets of code. Yeah, so plugin picks some code snippets from neighbor tabs being opened at the time. And also it became clear to plugin developers that file names are important, or also giving a language that we use is also important, and probably for this time something else as well. The interesting part is also how the plugin builds the prompt, because it's not using all the possible data that is available at the time, but it picks the data based on a priority. And this is because large language models, and especially the one used by GitHub Copilot, has token limits, and we need to prioritize what to send as a prompt to the backend. So the suffix part is not as important, but well, it helps to get in better completions, and it's about 15% of the whole prompt. And what is maybe from the perspective of a developer, what is most important is after getting a response from a model, there are some heuristics which decide whether even show a completion to the developer. And that's important because sometimes we are typing and Copilot does not completing any or suggesting any code to us, which is frustrating, but this information explains why it happens. And this is a nice diagram of the completion lifecycle. It's from GitHub blog, and as you can see here, the GPT model query is just one of the steps, one of the last ones. And GitHub Copilot is doing a lot of work before even sending a request for a response. So here is the first example of how it works live. So here I'm trying to implement a function which filters some names. They should be with some starting with prefixes and ending with suffixes. As you can see here, I can pick the completion which is best for me with some shortcut and apply the completion with tab key. So looks pretty simple. As a first recommendation, I can say that creating full lines of code might be a dangerous thing, because it makes us lazy. So it's better to just complete line by line and read what Copilot is doing. This is another example of GitHub Copilot. Here I'm explaining at the beginning of the file with comments what I want to achieve. Yeah, so it's not I haven't started even coding any function or whatever. So I'm explaining that I want to have a fast API application with 2 endpoints, and also it should use SQL Alchemy or RM with connection to PostgreSQL database. And as you can see here, it's just creating it. What is important, I gave it a lot of information in the comment, what I expect to generate, and being specific, but at the same time using simple language is very important while creating prompts in general for GPT models, but especially while using Copilot. This is another example. Here you can see that I started defining some test cases, but well, Copilot is doing it for me. So I'm only pressing tab key, and Copilot is first defined test cases, and then is implementing these test cases for me. At the end, you will see that test cases passes. Yeah. Yeah, so this is the current state of Copilot, but GitHub announced something which is called Copilot X. It will be better even because it's using GPT-4 model, but not only that, it will be a tool which is much more integrated with IDE. So it will have access to terminal errors. It will also have built-in chat. So it will be more like a pair programming experience. Currently, it's available as pre-release for Copilot subscribers and only for Visual Studio Code IDE. Here I have some failing tests, and because I have access to this pre-release of Copilot X, and here you can see that I'm chatting with the bot. And for now, it's not working perfectly. I needed to paste it to it some code. I expected it to have access to it, but it did not. And it gives some explanation of the reasons the code is not working. As you probably noticed, the full plugin, the whole plugin consists of two things, right? So the plugin inside an IDE and also the model, which is deployed somewhere in cloud probably. And if for any reason you cannot send any data outside from I don't know, some on-premise installation or something, there is a nice open source project which is called Fox Pilot, which help you deploy your own backend, your own model for GitHub Copilot. So you are able to integrate your existing Copilot IDE plugin with your, let's say, custom backend, and it also have, let's say, open AI like API. Another such tool which is worth checking is Amazon Code Whisperer. It's much younger tool, but the people in Amazon increased or improved this tool greatly just in a few months, and it gives some more control and transparency because it's giving the reference to the original original code it was based on while giving a completion. So here is the quick demo. So I'm implementing the same function as in Copilot example. And you can see here that it shows a little window, so we can get next or previous completion and so on. But in general, works pretty the same as Copilot. Thus, it's hard to compare it to GitHub Copilot in terms of quality, especially because it's really based on a unique case. And it's pretty fresh information because JetBrains is also planning to develop their own AI assistant built into their IDEs. It's available in early access versions of IDEs, and it includes AI chat, documentation generation, commit message generation, and name suggestions. So maybe not as wide as Copilot or Whisperer, but pretty interesting. Unfortunately, I haven't got any access to it yet. Yeah, so let's go for ChatGPT now and cases where it can be helpful in developers' life. So we can use Copilot or Whisper or any other such tool for generating code, but in developers' daily work, it's not all the thing we are doing. And there are a lot of cases being explored and discovered while using ChatGPT by many developers. Most or even all experiments show that GPT-4 is much better than its previous version, so it's worth investing in it. Let's see the first example. I gave it a task to create a regular expression for a few lines of logs, and it just created the proper one. Yeah, so if and defining as regex is not something we like, but have to do. So it's really really helpful in that. And giving examples to GPT models is a generally good idea, not only for developers' tasks. This is the case that I really love because something is wrong with my brain. I cannot just remember the bash syntax. I'm always Googling for it, even if I have to implement some simple thing. And here I asked for something not very specific, but simple. So ChatGPT properly guessed what I meant, but it's not always the best thing because in general, as a general rule, it's better to be specific in prompts. So in this example, I gave it much more specific instructions, and it created a Docker file for me that just worked. Yeah, this is maybe something not so great, I would say, but sometimes it's really hard to invent a nice variable name or function name. Here, I described what I want to store in a variable, and it gave me active, highly rated users, which is pretty descriptive name for this task. This case is very similar to what Copilot is doing, especially in this file header comments mode. So I asked him to create a function which is retrieving users from the database with some basic filtering, and it developed it properly. But these were like tasks close to implementing something or coding. This case is nice because it gives us some more abstractive thing. So it I asked it to compare two libraries, which is Strawberry for GraphQL and Fast API for REST. And it, as you can see, it created some nice comparison of those two. This case is also time saving because DDLs, I like creating tables in DB or any other boilerplate, can be outsourced to GPT. And as you maybe seen in this example, I asked it to use a PostgreSQL database, and it properly applied the types specific to this database. Then I asked it to translate it to SQL Alchemy models, and it did it. So translations from one representation to another is just nice case. And based on the previous example, I also asked it to generate some sample data, which we can, for example, use in tests. First was CSV format, but I then asked for JSON format, and it's just creating test data for me. Yeah. In this example, I created some not so nice code, and I asked it to add some logging, type hints, and exception handling, and it just rewrote the code with this good practices included. Debugging is maybe not the best case for ChatGPT, but for not very complicated examples, it can really find a problem. In this case wasn't very complicated, but at the same time it wasn't so trivial. Yeah, so it found that the reason of the problem is the comparison operator that I used. I should switch it to equal one. And even it's able to give some comments on the code, so create or generate a code review for us. And some tools, some extensions are using this capability of GPT right now, but we'll tell about them later. And this task is also more abstractive. So I wanted it to estimate or say something about computational complexity, and it nicely guessed that it's ON, but then I asked GPT-4 for it, and it was more specific because the real complexity was OM multiplied by N. So GPT-4 is just better. So we have these tools explained, I hope. And also, the interesting thing is that people started comparing them. And there is a nice paper which tries to compare the tools which are GitHub Copilot, Amazon Code Whisperer, and ChatGPT. But the tests were done in January this year. So maybe not so long ago, but at the same time, these tools are developed so quickly and so fast that it's probably obsolete for now. But the test was done on a human eval dataset, which is 164 problems to solve in Python language. And the problems were just functions with parameters and doc strings, and people asked the tools to implement these functions. And then the code generated was tested with unit tests and also with SonarQube for code quality and good practices implementation. So in general, the recommendations that we can get from this experiment is that applying good practices, I mean descriptive names, and also nice documentation might greatly improve the way these tools are working. It's just because we are giving more context to what we want to achieve. So it's something expected. The test makers also evaluated the combinations with obfuscated names, as well as nice names but without doc strings. And the results were just in simple cases it might work, but in more complicated, giving more context, gave better results. So let's go to another type of AI tools which cannot be simply, let's say, categorized. So first one, which is pretty useful, especially maybe for data scientists, is Gen AI extension for Jupyter notebooks. Here I'm having some issue with sort, and the extension is giving me some explanation what's wrong and how can I fix it, and it's built into Jupyter notebook. Pretty nice. Another thing, also very probably would be very welcomed by data scientists, is Gorilla. And this is a large language model which is trained specifically on code, including machine learning specific libraries. So like TorchHub, TensorFlow, Hugging Face. And it gives much better results while using these APIs, even than GPT-4 model. And the developers plan to include Kubernetes APIs, GCP, AWS, and Open API in next releases. Also, another nice tool is Find, which I understand as a great wrapper around GPT. And it's a tool which creates or thinks for us for creating prompts. and it just creates a journey with GPT model, asking right questions. Here I ask it to help me solve the problem of PyTorch model, which uses GPU, to optimize it, and the model is wrapped with fast API application. So it gave a few recommendations how I can improve my code or solve the issue. And for most of us, giving code reviews is something which, of course, have to be done, but we don't have time for it. And this is the tool for enhancing this process. It's just a Chrome extension. And when we go to some GitLab or GitHub pull request or merge request, it gives us some just a review of the change someone wants to merge into the code base. What is maybe interesting here, GitHub as well as GitLab are planning to introduce something like that natively into their products. So, final recommendations. First, stop crying, because we probably won't be quickly, as a developers, data scientists, and all other technical people won't be quickly replaced by AI. But we can be replaced by people who adapt quicker to AI tools, because they will be just more efficient than us. Second recommendation is learn prompting. I highly recommend you getting some tutorial. They are available for free on the internet. You can use the one that I pasted in one of slides. And this is some kind of prerequisite just to understand how the whole thing is working underneath. And last recommendation is picking at least 3 tools. Copilot like ChatGPT is also useful in a lot of tasks, and also explore and try the other tools that are built around GPT models, because there are more and more of them right now on the market, and probably not all of them will be worth checking, but we need to just have an eye on them, just to not be left behind. So, improvise, adapt, and overcome. Last things to consider are security things. And it's true that all those tools need to send some of your data, for example, your code snippets and other context information, to some third-party services like OpenAI API. And in case, for example, of Copilot, you don't even know what exactly is being sent. And it's a kind of blocker, especially for some organizations. And also, we heard about some famous data breaches connected with use of AI previously. And there is also some problems with licenses of the code that the models were trained on. Yeah, so the general conclusion is that it might be hard to adopt those tools in your daily work. But at the same time, the AI tools creators, they know about the problem and are trying to solve it somehow. For example, in Copilot, you can choose whether your code, the code you are sending, the plugin is sending, can be used for retraining the model. And also the organizations that we are working for, they know that if they don't let their workers to use those tools, they will be left behind, and will be their competitors will be just faster in in time to market, for example. Anyway, even if it's impossible right now to use them in your daily work, it's still worth checking them, playing with them, and probably in near future that things will change, and for somehow it will be possible to use them. Yeah, so that's all. Thank you very much for watching.